Good evening, everyone. Time for another episode of Kerr's Rage. Time for episode 15. All right. Starting on page 167, chapter entitled Bandits. Kaylor was rudely awakened by the sound of liquid splashing upon his boots. It required several groggy moments to fully comprehend the sound. In case he was dreaming, he opened his right eye just a crack to see where he was and why it was raining on his feet. Unfortunately, it wasn't a dream at all. One of the gypsy's goats was relieving itself upon his feet. "Get off me, you cursed beast!" Swatting at the disrespectful goat, he realized that one day this goat would be someone's dinner. Maybe he hadn't lost the fight after all. Looking about the quiet glade, he saw that all that remained of the bonfire was a small tendril of smoke rising into the early morning sky. The gypsies' tents were closed tightly against the darkness. Kerr was still snoring heavily, completely oblivious to everything around him. He even ignored the lamb lapping the remnants of last night's meal from his beard. "Away with you now," Kaylor said with a flourish, trying to clear his spot against the tree. Maybe he could pick up on that last dream that he'd started, but as he lay back down, he was suddenly startled by sounds from the north. It sounded like a woman's screams. Coming to his feet, he listened attentively for more sounds, and from whence they came, his sharp eyes could make out a pillar of black smoke streaming into the sky. "I've got to get everyone up. Someone's in trouble." Shaking Kerr roughly awake, he shouted to Tarek and his companions. "Tarek, Dartin, Leander, come and get up, quick!" "Stop shaking me," Kerr said grumpily. "What is it?" "I heard screaming." "Where?" "North, half a mile, maybe a little more, and there's smoke as well." "Well, why didn't you say so?" "Let's go crack some heads," Kerr said, rising to his feet and nearly stumbling from the after effects of so much wine. "Where's my axe?" "Moradas's beard! My axe!" Someone had inadvertently borrowed his trusty battle axe to chop wood, and they had left it sticking in the side of a large stump. "Gypsies! I knew that this was a bad idea from the beginning. I'll never get it sharp again." Continuing on with his proclamations of injustices real and imagined, he tromped over to regain his most trusted companion, his axe. The rest of his companions were rushing to don arms and armor and gathering their horses so that they could ride ahead and investigate. Many of the gypsy tents had flown open as well, and several sturdy men were headed for their horses with rapier-like scimitars and curved daggers. Carmen was hastily strapping on the last of her armor when Tarek and Kaylor ran past her. "We'll scout ahead on foot," Tarek said, "and meet you there." Speeding off into the deeply shadowed wood, they quickly disappeared beneath the forest canopy. "I've suspected that you have skills beyond those of magic. You understood the rogue's speech at the inn, although I only know a few gestures of it. I can handle myself if need be." "Good. Then try to keep up. I may need you to watch my back." Leading the way, Tarek strode quickly from shadow to shadow. His movements were natural and instinctive, matching the natural flow of the forest breeze. He was like a fleeting dream. If you concentrated upon where he was, you would never be sure if what you had seen was real at all. So it seemed to Kaylor, yet he was no less effective in his pursuit of the art of concealment. The only real difference between his skill and the ranger's was environment. He had learned his skills in the streets, while Tarek had learned his in the wild woods. His small stature only aided him in such action. Being only waist-high to elves and men, he could find pathways through the forest undergrowth that few others could hope to pass through. In this manner, both the gnome of the city and the ranger of the forest approached the sounds of struggle. As they got closer, the clash of arms, intermingled with screams of anguish and agony, grew, and they could well imagine what was about to unfold before them. Soon they could see the soft orange glow of firelight reflecting off the trunks of the surrounding trees. It was then that their hearts filled with trepidation, for the shadows of those in battle danced eerily about the wood. Back at the gypsy camp, the party was making their final preparations for battle. "Alger," Carmen said, "let's go." And the strong chestnut gelding leaped forward. Spurring him onto the road, she led them all north toward the rising pillar of black smoke. "I just hope that we're not too late," D'Artagnan said as he wheeled his horse to follow. "Hang on, Keg," Leander warned as his horse surged ahead. Holding on to Leander's belt with his left hand, Kerr clutched his axe in his right. Leander thought that he heard some grumbling comment about the flexibility of dwarven legs, but he paid it little heed. He had to concentrate. Invisible tree branches lashed their faces as they rode swiftly into the greater darkness of the woods. Soon they heard the sounds of battle, even over the clatter of their horses' hooves. They were a company joined by purpose, linked in spirit, and swept away by danger. Carmen slowed their pace as they approached the fighting. Hidden enemies could lurk anywhere. Looking ahead, she saw two figures step out of the shadows. Their hand signals identified them as her two scouts. "What's going on?" she whispered. "Bandits," Tarek said. "We've got to act quickly. They are well organized, and most of the gypsies who came to help have already fallen." "Do any guard the road?" "Only one man on horseback." "I'll take care of him. Men, follow me. You two do what you do best. There's no time left for stealth." "Ha!" she shouted, spurring Alger into a full gallop. Lifting her halberd from its stirrup mount, she spied her enemy. Her auburn hair danced behind her like flames blown by the wind. Her companions dismounted as soon as the clearing was in sight. They could do their best work from the ground, for none of them were trained to fight from horseback like Carmen was. D'Artagnan shifted his shield from his back and prepared it. Drawing his sword, he moved forward with his companions. "Bless us, Odin, for by my father's teachings I do invoke the rune of courage. Embolden us, and may our strongest hand remain uppermost." Leander and Kerr flanked him upon his right and left. The anticipation of battle was bringing their blood to a boil. Indeed, Kerr was little slowed by his new suit of dwarven mail, and although he favored hand-to-hand combat, he'd readied his crossbow in case they needed a ranged weapon. Ahead of them, they could see Carmen bearing down upon a solitary rider, charging at her with a lowered spear. His weapon was at least a foot longer than hers. It was a handicap that might prove too much for her. Ahead of them, the terrible cries of a woman in torment could be heard, and the sounds of battle had nearly ceased. They were too late. Carmen bore down upon the brigand with simmering battle lust. Leaning forward upon Alger's muscular neck, her legs almost fully extended in the stirrups, she guided him with her thighs and a strong handful of his mane. An outside observer would be certain that she felt confident of her own victory, but her stomach churned with butterflies. Her heart was low with confidence lost. Her soul had paid dearly in her encounter with the dire wolves, but she was the daughter of Sir William Anastasia, and her family was made of sterner stuff. Her father had never known the bitter defeat of a quitter, nor would his daughter know it now. She rode on. For a moment, the savage face of her enemy flashed before her in the moonlight, his hideous face showing an eager smile and a mouth full of rotten teeth. That single brief glimpse was enough for her to know that he expected an easy victory, for who would possibly be afraid of some insane woman on horseback? Who indeed, she thought. Closing the final distance between them, he chambered his spear for the killing strike. Their dark horses pounded madly beneath them. The brigand's look of surprise quickly turned to one of shock, as his spearhead was easily turned aside by the wide blade of her halberd. Her weapon sliced cleanly through his ribcage and continued on, almost without interruption. As he fell from his horse, he was certain that she never even paused to look back. Wolves were savage and unpredictable. Men on horseback were something that she knew very well how to deal with. Riding into the clearing, she was shocked by the scene of carnage before her. 4 weapons lay overturned, with another 2 engulfed in flames. Their blackened shells stood out like the skeletons of ancient beasts. Gypsy bodies lay about the wreckage, some still clinging to life, while most of them were beyond hope. By the closest wagon, 4 bandits were furiously assaulting a young woman in a frenzy of rape. Her wounded mother looked on from within a pool of her own. Her wounded mother looked on from within a pool of her own blood. Her face was tear-filled with tragedy and dismay. The scene would remain forever in her psyche. Never had she witnessed so vile an atrocity. She knew now why she had been chosen. All her insecure thoughts were suddenly forgotten, immediately replaced by a chaotic rage which screamed for swift justice within her. She would scream no fierce battle cry for these men, for they deserved no such warning. They knew nothing of the honor of Vandermoinen. Sweat stung her eyes. Alge's hooves tore into the earth with the power of righteousness. Rider and mount were one. They descended with divine might upon the brigands, seeking the fruits of their believed victory. Carmen's reinforcements were a few seconds behind her. They moved swiftly yet with caution, for danger could strike them at any moment. They hoped that their keen night vision would give them advantage over their human enemies. Surprisingly, it was not their eyes that first warned them of danger, but their ears. For an arrow in flight makes a particular sound as it speeds towards its target, although few have the quickness of reaction to avoid one. Whiz thunk, whiz thunk. Deadly arrows were the only enemy that the 3 of them had time to find. "Get down," D'Artin shouted, diving for cover behind a nearby tree. "Where is he?" Leander asked, pulling his longbow over his shoulders and knocking an arrow. "I can't see him." "I see him," Kerr whispered. "Where?" "In that huge tree, just at the edge of the glade. Can't get a clear shot from here, though. He's too well concealed." "I'll draw his fire," D'Artin said. "You too take him down." "No," Leander said. "It's too risky." But his misgivings went unheeded as his long-time companion rolled out from under the safety of the trees, rose and ran toward their hidden enemy. And although such acts of bravery often end fatally and foolishly, D'Artin was no fool. Few archers could easily hit a running man in the dark, and fewer still could strike a man doing his best to avoid being hit. Each time he left the cover of the trees, he raised his shield before him. 3 times an arrow was launched at him from above, and 3 times his shield saved him, the ever-watchful Eye of Odin flashing in the blood moon's eerie glow. Finally he reached the defender's tree and hid safely beneath a mighty branch. His enemy's arrows landed harmlessly in the forest floor around him. If his friends couldn't get the sniper down soon, he'd have to go up and get him. Carmen needed their help, and this was a potentially deadly delay. "Can you get a clear shot?" Kerr said. "No," Leander said. "He's too quick." "Now is our chance. Let's move up while we can." Bounding forward from tree to tree, they closed the distance between they and their foe. The brigand seemed to have forgotten them for his closer opponent, and no arrows were fired at them at all. 30 feet from the tree's massive trunk, they trained their weapons on the canopy above. "He's about 20 feet up," D'Artin said just loudly enough for all of them to hear. "I think he's out of arrows." "Oh yeah," Kerr said. "I see him now. No, he's got 1 left, but his poor quiver seems empty." "You there," Leander said. "There's no hope for you now. Come on down and give yourself up." The swift thud of the brigand's last arrow striking the tree before him seemed to convey the man's refusal to surrender. "Shall we play a little game of trap the squirrel?" Leander asked. "Indeed, sir," Kerr said. "But I really must allow you the honor of the first shot." "Do I have to remind you 2 gentlemen," D'Artin said, "that a battle is going on?" He has such a way of spoiling the fun, doesn't he, Keg? He loosed his first quarrel at their squirrel. "I dare say that your arrow was deflected by yon leftward branch," Kerr said, firing his crossbow. "I say, Kerr, you seem to have winged him." "Why, yes, Leander, I do believe I have." Stepping upon his crossbow stirrup, he cocked the string and reloaded. Above them, the archer was panicking. In a last act of defiance, he hurled his now useless bow down upon them and climbed higher. Kur's bolt was protruding from his left shoulder, but adrenaline was masking his pain, and his ascent was little slowed. "The squirrel's running," Leander said, firing another arrow. "Damn, I missed him." "One moment, sir. I believe I shall have a clear shot in just a moment." "Yes," Kerr whooped as he saw his enemy's body reel with the hit. The man fell almost immediately, striking a branch about every 5 feet or so on the way down. He was more than finished when he reached the ground. "Look, D'Artin, quick," Leander said, suddenly sobered. "He's an orc." "Not an orc," Kerr observed gravely, "only half. Their kind is often associated with thieves and other less wholesome wretches." "No time to waste," D'Artin said. "I hear Tarek and Kalor, and it sounds like they're in trouble." Rogue and Ranger entered the woods the moment that Carmen led her charge. They moved like silent shadows, slipping between bushes and thickets. Most of the brigands seemed to be occupied within the glade. Carmen and the others were best suited to handle that threat, but the hidden dangers of unseen enemies was a craft left best to them. Moving closer to the clearing, they could see Carmen descending on 4 men who hadn't yet noticed her approach. Several more thieves were hitching horse teams to wagons filled with their newfound spoils. Their leader sat atop a pale gray horse. Unlike the rest, he was heavily armored. Swinging his sword about himself in command, they saw his great helm with the back-swept wings of a diving dragon protecting his ears. "Let's circle around," Kalor Tarek whispered. "Maybe we can get a clear shot at him." Nodding seriously, Kalor slipped back into the shadows. Leading silently, Tarek followed. Gripping his powerful recurved bow, Tarek held arrows in both of his hands. Moving stealthily, they would surely have had their shot at the leader. That is, if watchful eyes had not been set in wait for adversaries just like themselves. Finding a game trail heading in their perfect direction, Kalor slunk ahead, confident of their success. Shouting foul epithets, the brigands charged. "Die, foul elf and stupid gnome." They attacked with such a sudden rush that lesser men's courage would surely have withered in surrender. Their hiding place was well camouflaged and expertly chosen. It was a murderous and near inescapable death trap. Caught by surprise, Tarek was overborne. Rolling with his foe's crazed attack, he avoided injury but lost his bow and arrows. Heaving with all his strength, he threw the brigand off himself and rose. His left arm wouldn't respond to his will. Looking down, he saw a wound that he couldn't feel. Poison. Drawing his sword, he wove a protective pattern about himself and advanced toward the robber. And that's where we'll end episode 15 at the top of page 175. Next time we'll see what happens to Tarek and Kalor. Thank you for reading Kerr's Rage, part 1 of the Duaredheim Staff Saga. And remember, as always, read the Duaredheim Staff Saga. Thank you and have a good night.